My name is John George. I am originally from Kerala, India. I'm located in Sunnyvale, California. I work for a startup called Formant. We enable autonomous companies in accelerating autonomy and automations. So we provide a cloud backend and a cloud solution for these companies in terms of observability, analytics, and operations of these robots. My day-to-day job involves gathering requirements from customers, working with sales teams, and then articulating these requirements into an engineering profile or engineering story, so that our engineering team can go and execute on these problems or on these pain points that our customers or our sales team bring up in terms of selling our product. No way in my dream would I have imagined myself doing robotics. So I started my career like many people in India. I started off as an engineering candidate. I did computer science, and then I came to the United States for my higher studies. I wanted to be an engineer, and so I pursued that, and I started working as an engineer, as a software engineer at Motorola. And at that time, at that point in my life, all I wanted to be was some of the best. I'd worked with some really great engineers, and I wanted to be someone like them. But then as I started working, I realized that there are other options and opportunities in the software engineering world. It's not just about building, there's also a whole lot outside of building, including selling. But there's also product management, product marketing, program management, project management. But in general, engineering is one part of a big set of skills and skills that are necessary to develop a successful product. So once I realized that, I started trying out a few, like Skillet Will. There were a few personality tests that I took, and I realized what my personality suited in terms of what career options I had within this realm. And then I just started talking to people and got an opportunity, got an opening to work as a product manager on the side while I was doing engineering. And then from there, it's been a few years now. So I'm now basically leading product at Formant. So being an engineer and being skilled to be an engineer is one thing. An engineer typically, the one of the skill sets of an engineer is to dive deep into a problem or dive deep into a solution, right? Trying to solve a problem. While a lot of these other skills are not about diving deep. It's not about going 1 foot deep. It's likely about going 1 inch deep while going 1 foot wide. So you want to see the problem domain in a wider manner. So you want to see when someone talks about a problem, an engineer usually likes to go solve that problem within the realm of a problem, right? Which means you're going down really deep into that problem, right? Trying to write code, trying to solve that problem from that perspective. But many of these other personalities or personas, right, that help in building a software might not be going deep. They might be going wide, and their job is to go wide, so they can see the problem from several different angles. One of my previous CEOs at my previous startup used to say, a mile wide and an inch deep is sometimes what is required of some of these other personas, like a product manager. Right? They're not necessarily going deep, they're going wide. They need to go wide so they can understand the problem. While as an engineer, you're trained to go deep. You're trained to understand what is this problem, how do I solve it, now let me go and code it, let me learn it, etc. And that's required. So changing an engineer personality from going 1 foot deep into 1 foot wide takes a little bit of time, takes a little bit of training, takes help from colleagues. Right. So yes, those were challenges. The early days were definitely challenging because my brain kept on going deep while it should have gone wide. And there are some challenges associated with that in terms of getting through those. Well, everything doesn't involve coding in product development, but I think it helps a lot knowing about coding, starting off with coding, because that is an underlying skill that any software company would need. Right? That's what a software company does, is to code. Ultimately, end of the day. But as you grow in your career or as you change your career paths, you don't necessarily need to code on a day-to-day basis to make an impact. But knowing to code and understanding how something is solved is almost absolutely necessary. Even if you don't come from a computer science background, it would always help to know what to code. In my case, for example, I started off as a C programmer, and you won't see many kids doing C these days, or many companies using C these days. But I was interested in C because I wanted to do embedded systems, and embedded systems mostly had C programming. But then now, in my world, the world I work in today, a lot of my colleagues code in Java, code in Go, code in C++, maybe. Right? So the programming domain has evolved over the years. Python, JavaScript, all that. I loved C and I still like C. If I were to code, I'm most comfortable in C, but I had to over time evolve into learning Java, into learning JavaScript and Python, and et cetera, et cetera. The key is to get in and learn one. Start with one language, whatever that language be, right? So for example, if you're going into web development, you probably want to choose a couple of languages related to web development. C is definitely not one of them, right? You might be learning Python as an example, or you might be learning JavaScript. But if you want to get into embedded development, like I did, you probably want to get into C, right? Or if you're just developing backend, Java, C++, or any object-oriented programming is a great opportunity, or some of these newer ones like Go. But ultimately, end of the day, it doesn't matter what language it is. What matters is how well you know that language. Do you at least know one language good enough to answer interview questions, well enough to go solve a problem, well enough to think about it, and in some cases even search for solutions on it, right? Do you know enough? And learning a language doesn't just mean learning to write a code. As you work in your first job, you'll realize writing code is a really small part of solving a problem. You have to write code, but then get that code ready for production, getting it out in the world where hundreds of thousands to millions of users are going to use it on a day-to-day basis. That requires a different type of mentality. That requires a mentality of writing really good code, not just writing up code, right? It's actually coding it to a point where you can be confident in your code. So while there's a difference between C and Python and Java and JavaScript and Go and whatever language you choose, the important part is choosing one and making forward progress. Now, I think it'll be interesting if you choose a domain instead of choosing a language first. Like, choose a domain. Do you want to do web development? Are you more interested in doing front-end development, where you influence the graphical user interface of a web page or an application? Or are you more of a back-end guy because you're not that artistic, for example, right? You're not interested in the art or design part of development. You're more interested in tough, algorithmic, complex mathematical problems. Then it's a different domain that we're talking about. So choose a domain, find out where your skill sets reside, then decide what a language would solve for that, right? Or what are the couple of options? Once you learn a language, it's easier to move to a different language. Like I said, if you learn C++, Java is not that big a deal, right? So the same way. So and a lot of times you will have to, as you evolve in your career, you will want to learn new languages. You want to keep upskilling yourself with these new languages. Yeah, I think the first thing to do is to pick a problem. So instead of just learning a language for the sake of learning a language, you have to pick a problem and try to solve that problem using the language that you've picked. The way to pick a skill is not to go learn it from a book, but to actually go and code it to solve a problem. For example, if you're a Python, if you're comfortable with Python, I'm assuming there's some reason you picked up Python, probably because it was easy, probably because you're trying to solve a problem. Pick a problem in that domain, right? For example, if you're more interested in mathematical problems, go pick a data science problem. It can be really simple. It can be already a solved problem. You're not trying to build a new product. You're trying to learn the skill. So, for example, let's say you're interested in data science. We can take a really simple problem. For example, recognizing objects in a traffic light, right? So you can use one of these cloud technologies that exist today, Google or Amazon, and try to use your skill to solve that specific problem. Or if you're picking up C, order Raspberry Pi and try to see what you can, what you can build in terms of a product from a Raspberry Pi. Or if you're, for example, interested in robotics, you can get many products out there, including Raspberry Pi, which can be thought of as a robot, or maybe a deep razor from AWS. Download, order it, get it in, and try to code on that domain. Try to code on that problem. The best way to learn something is to solve a problem. So I would say, along with choosing a domain, along with choosing a problem, you want to try to solve it. Not only will that help you learn, imagine the impact it will have on your resume when you really solve the problem. And if you can point your future employees into your work that you've done while you're learning it, that just adds a lot of credibility into what you have done, to what you have learned. A lot of times it's not just about telling them that you know C or you know Java. It's actually showing them and giving them a link to a website and saying, you can go check my work at this website. This is what I've done. So that's what my recommendation is. So I would say, irrespective of what your interests are, what you think your skill sets are, it's always good to get yourselves into this domain, into the domain of software, because what you can do with that domain is amazing. Or even take some of these example websites today. Let's say Etsy or Amazon. You can sell your skills, or Fiverr. You can sell your skills at these websites. You can sell your product at these websites. And instead of having to go find someone to do that, you can, if you have this basic skills of web programming, or maybe it's not even web programming, just basic skill of trying to work with a website, you could actually be selling your product, which is an artistic product, or it is a non-software related product, on some of these websites. So I think in today's age, it is important that kids are upskilled by the time they reach 12. And then engineering, of course, is an option, or any degree for that matter is an option. But the fact that they know how to take their product or any product and get it onto the world, which is the internet, is important. And gaining skills related to that is also important. I think COVID essentially accelerates some of these digital transformations. You would see that all over the internet. In robotics, for example, with robotics, a lot of companies, a lot of our customers are eliminating the need for human beings to be close to each other. So thereby basically empowering these companies and empowering human beings to work at a much higher productive rate. So if you were to ask me what should a fresh grad do, I would say they have a skill set, they have an interest. Try to get their skills up and going to a point where they can prove that they were upskilling themselves during this pandemic. This is temporary. This is going to go away in the next, few months, hopefully, right? But after that, the key is, when things get back to normal, how do you prove that you're not just sitting at home and watching Netflix, right? How do you prove that you're doing something useful, that you upskilled yourself, that you are going to prove your persistence, your mettle, right, in this pandemic era? I think this is an opportunity for kids to show that it doesn't matter what is out there, you can still do what you're interested in solving, right? You can still solve that problem. That is especially related to software and IT. There's no reason for them to not upskill themselves and to actually solve a problem. Whether you're working on some of these hardware domains like embedded systems or robotics, or whether you're working on a software domain, there's no reason. The cloud world has solved for many of these problems. So maybe try out some new ideas. Maybe I know the startup has a lot of hype, but you don't have to think about it as a startup. Just try to solve a problem. Can we solve a human being's problem? Maybe it's the shopkeeper next to your house. Maybe it's your grandmother trying to communicate or go buy something from a store nearby. Can you solve that problem? For example, WhatsApp has, can you solve some of these communication problems with some of these existing communication tools? Can you use their APIs? Can you build something? So it's merely, to me, a question of how much persistence, how much motivation do you have, how much interest do you have during these tough times. But can you be motivated to do something that you can add to your resume once this stabilizes, that you can use once this stabilizes? Yeah, so I'd say there are two parts to Skill at Will, two ways in Skill at Will helps kids, right? So some kids are born with the knowledge of what they want to do, right? If you think about some of these kids who let's take Michael Jordan as an example, right? He knew what he wanted to do in his life. He knew it was basketball. He just went, did it, succeeded, became the best basketball player in the world, and he's retired now. But there are some kids like me. I didn't know what to do with my life. I just enjoyed. I was just chilling out, and then life just showed me some paths, and I took it, and it's still showing me paths. And I think some of us, both these categories, what is common is in both these examples, or in the example of Michael Jordan, what he did was he practiced. He practiced for hours, and he knew he wanted to do it, so he practiced. He spent his entire childhood practicing, right? His college life, his NBA life, practicing. And skill at will is an example of where you can be guided, especially for someone like me, where I had to take my life or my career or my my computer science as an opportunity. I would use both the examples that skill at will sets, or both the paths that skill at will opens. It helps you understand what your immediate next steps could be in your career, right? So in terms of consultation, in terms of career enhancements, or the next step to take in terms of your skills and your personality, it helps with that. I'd say skill at will is important, and anyone out there, it's such an opportunity to find courses near you, find interests near you, or even to find what your next opportunity could be in terms of your personality match. It's just something that I'd use for sure if I had access to it and a need for it.